Hi, y'all. This is Kristen Chenoweth.
Hi, I'm Gloria Stefan.
This is Sarah Bareilles.
Hi, I'm Patty Lapone.
This is Lin-Manuel Miranda. You're listening to the Broadway Podcast Network.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Theater Podcast. I'm your host, Alan Seals, and our guest today is Miriam Silverman, who just won a Tony earlier this year for her role in The Sign in Sidney Brustein's Window. And in full disclosure, we're releasing this episode here end of August, and I actually recorded with her beginning of July. I thought it was very, very important to talk with her as close to the Tony win as possible, because I wanted to be able to capture that joy, the excitement that she had coming off of that Tony win. So that's why we recorded so long ago, and obviously there's other things that have been released since then, but now finally releasing this episode with Miriam, and just an absolute joy to talk to. She just got such she's grounded. She's got this great head on her shoulders. She just understands the business and understands that it is a business, and just continues trucking. And gosh, I can't say enough. I just had such a great time talking with her. So you know what to do. Find me online, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, Facebook, all the places. Leave a rating, leave a review, tell your friends, and know everybody. I hope you enjoyed this episode with Miriam Silverman.
Here you go. 1, 2, 3.
Today's guest is no stranger to stage and screen, having her literal birth televised live on Good Morning America some years ago. She made her Broadway debut in 2017 in Junk, and has TV credits that include Bernice in Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, Fleischman is in Trouble, and Dead Ringers on Amazon. She's also an acting coach and currently a theater professor at NYU Tisch School of the Arts, and she just won this little thing called a Tony Award for her portrayal of Mavis in the recent off and on Broadway revival of the Sidney in Sidney Brustein's Window, alongside Rachel Brosnahan and Oscar Isaac. These two up-and-comers, check them out too. Miriam Silverman, welcome to the Theater Podcast.
Thank you so much. It's so nice to be here.
Man, you are fresh off of your Tony win. I remember it was in the media room with all the other pool of very unenthusiastic reporters and news people. Like, I wanna paint this for the average person who's like, it must be so great that moment you win a Tony and you get to go up on stage and you give these great speech in front of like 1,000 of your closest friends, and then you get whisked away to like outside the building. Sometimes now it's inside the building. Now in the Heights, you take a car up to a 10-minute ride where I was with the other news outlets and then you go into this room where everyone's like been there since 4 o'clock. It's 10 o'clock where everyone's tired, and you're just like, hey, who's got a question? Everyone's like, I guess I do. Like, walk me through that night, because let's just start there. Walk me through the Tony win.
It was surreal and bizarre, and like, you know, they send you all this information in advance, like, if you win, blah, 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 blah. And I would like to assume that no normal, sane person who has like a shred of modesty actually reads all of it. At least I didn't, because it's like, you're not gonna be like, oh yes, let me be prepared for all the steps that are gonna happen. Now, maybe if I were like, you know, Victoria Clark or Audrey McDonald, or somebody who had done this a million times, or like everybody said was going to win. I don't know, but I did not read that information closely at all. The only thing I had read and really paid heed to was to have a script in my hand. That I was sort of told numerous times that I would go into a kind of, I went into a kind of fugue state, really. And like just blackout, no idea what was going on. So I was glad I had my little safety net of my script in my hand. But I hadn't really read all the details of what happens. I had a vague idea that, you get taken off to do press for a while. But I really didn't know what it was going to be like. I did my speech. I get brought off stage there's this amazing picture that Jenny Anderson, who's just one of the best photographers of theater and in general. Jenny took this amazing picture of me where there's like kind of like empty Mountain Dew cans behind my head and some other like detritus and all this electrical equipment, and it's like I'm in my 5-inch high heels holding my Tony, my adrenaline just like going berserk, and Kenny Leon and David Hemmings Wong like escorting me off. No idea really what had happened. And then you sort of get, I had to take tiny little baby steps because of my shoes and my dress, and I get brought into the first reactions interview, which is both great and like a little mean. It's like a little mean to do that. I understand the spirit of it, and if I win a Tony again someday, I'll be better prepared. But it's like it's designed, I think, to catch you when you're in that moment of just deer in headlights. Like, did that happen? And so anyway, I ill prepared for that, even though I knew it was going to happen. I don't even know what I said. I haven't had the heart to go back and watch that interview because I'm too nervous about what an idiot I might have sounded like. Because I'm like, blah! And then, you get put in a car. I got put in an Escalade and driven what I swear felt like 30 minutes. It was probably closer to 10, but it felt like an eternity. And I got handed a bag. With a bottle, like room temperature, meaning hot. It was a hot night. A bottle of Veuve Clicquot from the theater, American Theater Wing, as a congratulations, and a bottle of water and a phone charger, which I incidentally didn't realize was nicely charged. So of course, didn't use it that night, even though my phone died. But I didn't have my phone at that moment because, of course, when you're well, no, I would have if I had known what I was in for. But your name gets called, and you bolt up and try to get to the stage in time to get your 90-second speech out. And, of course, left my purse and my phone and everything with my husband, and then didn't see any of them or any of it again for hours, it felt like. So, I ended up in the back of the car with my little bottle of water, desperately wanting someone to hand me a drink or something. I had it, I almost wishing I'd had a cocktail or sitting there waiting at the beginning of the ceremony. The car took forever at one point, and I'm just everything is going up and down. Like, did that just happen? I don't know. I'm alone in the back of a car. Did that happen? Did I win a Tony? Where am I being taken? Where are we going? We're driving forever through Washington Heights.
There's not like a Tony chauffeur, a Tony rep in there.
No.
Oh.
There's the driver. And I should have said, hey, I just want a Tony. But I think he knew and was unfazed about it. At one point I did say, are we almost there? Because it felt like we were in the car forever. And he said, yeah, just a few more minutes. So finally, after what felt like an interminable journey, we get there to some random hotel. Yeah, and I get brought upstairs. And there I'm met by my publicist, whose other client had won, so she was there. And then everything started to feel a little more normal. Like, I got to hug Bonnie Milligan and do a bunch of more pictures. And yes, by the time I got to the room where you were, everyone was just sort of like, doo-doo-doo. And it was, it's funny, I had done one of those big press rooms at the Tony Junket, where I'd gotten in there earlier in the day, so it wasn't such a the energy was more up. But yes, I felt like everybody was kind of done, and I was like, oh wow, we're only like a third of the way into the ceremony.
It's a different vibe. It's a much different vibe because at the press, the Meet the Nominees junket, it's a bunch of people. We're not there as long. I was there at that one too, and actually I was running camera when you talked to Carrie Butler.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. For Broadway Podcast Network. So we were there. But remember, it's like everyone's close, all close together. There's nothing else you're trying to watch because part of what we're wanting to watch the actual Tony Awards while they're happening, while listening to people coming through for their speeches. And it's weird. It's weird, but it's a night like I just love it. It's such an energetic night. But anyway, congratulations, you won a Tony.
Thank you. I mean, the weirdest part, aside from being in the car by myself with no way to call my dad or call anybody, was getting back to the Tonys and getting ushered back inside and having no idea what had happened or how much I'd missed.
Oh, yeah.
And so I remember like walking, I went out to go try to find my dad at one point because he was sitting up in the balcony, and I walked by Amy Herzog and I was like, hey, I was like, are they doing yours soon? She's like, no, they already did it. I didn't win. I'm like, oh, it's like, I had no idea who had won what at that point because I missed like an hour of the ceremony. But, you know, it was worth it.
It's rough because even for those in musicals and when performing, sometimes
Right.
you have to come and you have to schedule all of this press stuff around the changes of your costume, because you have to change in or out of your costume
Right.
to do your performance, while because you might also be a presenter, you might also be a nominee, or like it's a mess. So it's a scheduling nightmare. But you won the Tony. Where is it sitting now?
Well, it's
And have you
actually
named
at.
it?
Oh no, maybe I'll let my daughter do that.
Okay.
She'll probably want that honor. That's a good idea. My Tony is actually not in my possession. I did get it back. That was also jarring that I got to take it home and then had to bring it back in the next day to have them send it away for engraving. But I did get it back. We closed our show a week ago Sunday. I got it back right before we closed, and then I think wanted to show it to my dad, so I brought it up to his apartment, and I was going somewhere where I didn't want to carry around the heavy Tony, so it's still there. So I haven't actually brought it back to my home yet, but when I do bring it to my home, which will happen this week, it's going to live on our piano.
Nice.
Yeah.
I love how the various places people put it. And Brandon Uranowitz in his media room, or in his speech, and somebody asked about it in the media room too. They were like, "I'm going to give this to my parents. This is for you." And then so his is probably going to live in his parents' house for a little while. But it's really funny how all that stuff happens. But let's back up, because you were born on live TV.
Yes.
And I'm sure you've told the story a million times, but when your mother gave birth, it was because, I think this is hilarious, it was because GMA was doing a story or something your mom was being filmed because she was 35, and at that time it was, I put in air quotes, super old to have a baby. So we're like, look how hard it is to have a baby at 35.
Yeah, exactly. She was having her first child, me, at 35. And it was considered like, scandalous and crazy and newsworthy, I guess. So GMA followed a small group of women in New York City around to their doctor's appointments and to their Lamaze classes. And I think, I don't actually know if it was more than my parents in the end my birth was filmed, and then they had them on the show a week later. My dad actually just dug out the VHS recording for me.
I was going to ask if you had watched it.
I watched it when I was way too young. I think they showed it to me because I was curious, and then I'm like, I don't want to do that, because we got the unedited version. I'm sure they did not show the graphic version on national television, but but the version that we have, as far as I can remember, showed a lot.
Ugh. Yeah, it's weird to see like your own birth. I don't think I would want to see that.
Crazy, yeah.
Let alone that part of my mom.
Right.
Yeah, not so cool. But then, I mean, did this? I guess how did your parents get involved with this? Because I think I was reading your mom was like an activist or
super random. Yeah, my mom was a public school teacher and an activist. No, it was purely by chance that OBGYN practice that she ended up at in New York City, that doctor was, I guess, well known and had been approached to see if he wanted to ask some of his patients to volunteer, and my parents were like, sure. So that was the only connection. I think they got like free Lamaze classes out of it or something. I'm not sure, but.
Oh, that's pretty cool though. I mean, it's just funny because my first son was born right before my wife turned 35. She was 34 at the time. Yeah, and it was no big deal. Like now,
that's exactly the same for me with my first. Yeah, it wasn't a big deal because times have changed, but that's then.
Yeah, and then so you're one of two. You have a brother, right?
I have two brothers actually.
Oh, two brothers.
Yeah.
Wait, so you have one brother who's an FDNY lieutenant.
Yeah.
fire department, and then I thought it was one brother who did both. One was a lieutenant and one is a poker player. But one is a poker player, and you have two. Okay.
Yeah.
So you've got fire department, you've got pro poker player in the family, and then Tony winner?
Actress. Yes. I don't know what my parents did, my dad was a journalist, my mom was a teacher, but somehow the three of us ended up like real weirdos, but hey,
Listen, when my kids call each other weird, I'm like, that is a compliment. You take it, you say thank you. Because I think weird is different and different is good. And I enjoy it.
I agree.
So born and raised in New York City, product of New York City. Let's see, public schools. So then where growing up, were you involved with the performing arts? Did you get into acting, theater, anything? Like, where did this all start?
It's so funny how I've been sort of recreating this history recently because I've been asked to talk about it a lot. And I'm kind of, every time I talk about it, I remember a different element in the whole puzzle piece. But the short answer is no, I wasn't into acting as a kid. I was into dancing. I started taking ballet at age 3 and was definitely into performing. I played piano also, and I liked to sing. And my dad and mother both brought me to a lot of shows. My dad brought me to musicals. Like, I was definitely into consuming dance and musical theater and the arts for sure as a New York City kid. But my junior high school, I went to a little junior high school just on the edge of East Harlem, and we had a fabulous drama teacher. And so I did do some acting there, but in like the Vietnam War memorial show that we had, like the Black History Month show. I think there was one kind of abridged production of Grease that we did where I got to play Rizzo, but usually it was just like scene study classes. So I remember doing a monologue, like Emily's final monologue in Our Town as a 7th grader, and, feeling like, oh, I'm good at this. I like it. Everybody likes what I do. And so I auditioned for LaGuardia, for the Performing Arts High School, and I got in. I really wrestled with whether to go, and at the last minute, the night before, I decided to go to Brustein.
Really?
I don't know. Sometimes I'm like, did I chicken out? But I was a real nerd. I really was academically engaged and precocious. And back then, in what would have been the mid-late 90s, the LaGuardia's academics weren't so hot. I think they're much better now. But I really wanted to go somewhere where I could keep being a nerd. And I figured I could also act eventually. And I'm grateful for it because of course, Brustein had no drama department, none whatsoever, which I had to remind the former principal of Brustein who came to see Sidney Brustein's window randomly recently and asked to come see me backstage. And he was like, were you involved? I was like, there was no drama program. There was nothing. There was not even a cabaret during my time. The only thing there was speech and debate.
We're going to take a short break. Stay tuned for more of the episode.
There was a speech and debate team.
That's not performing. I mean, I guess it is performing. It's politics. There you go.
Well, but here's the funny thing. In the speech section of it, there were a couple of categories that were the dramatic interpretation.
What? Wait. Explain that.
It is the dorkiest thing. It is, and you know what's brilliant is that Billy Eichner was actually a Stuyvesant at the same time. And we competed against each other. And I've seen him a lot recently, and we have just laughed our asses off about the fact that we used to do this bizarre form of performing where, I'd be doing a scene, and there were really strict rules because it was a speech competition. So your scene partner, you had to stand side by side, and you couldn't ever turn to each other or interact with each other or touch each other. You had to stand there with binders with your script, even though everybody was memorized, but you had to give the illusion of using your script and look straight out at a point on the wall. So I would be talking to my scene partner here against, over there. So we were side by side pretending to act with each other. It was so insane. And then there was also a category where you did, it must still be the same. I should have asked them because the entire Bronx High School Science Speech and Debate team came to see my show also recently. And I met all these adorable juniors and seniors. I should have asked them if it's still the same because dramatic interpretation was the other category. And that was like solo performance, essentially, where you did a scene by yourself. So I remember the thing that I think I won, but I mean, I was good. I went to state championships, national championships, and I did a scene from a couple different plays, but where I would play like 3 characters. So I'd like have one focal point and one voice to be one character. This is so embarrassing. I can't believe I'm explaining this. I play like 3
This is
different characters.
fascinating.
This is why someday I'll do like, search for intelligence out there. I'll do some crazy one-woman play and people will be like, I'll be able to say that started in high school in the Bronx Science Speech and Debate team. Yeah, no, it's crazy. So it was performance, but it wasn't like acting with a partner. That didn't happen until college. That in college, I auditioned for the very first play that I could, and I got cast, and that was, that's all she wrote.
Like, who came up with this? That's what I want to know.
I don't know.
Like, we're gonna get some performing in here, but you can't look at each other. That's category number 1, and number 2, you have to make it all up and do it yourself.
Yep.
Like, that makes no sense. Oh, well, I guess, whatever. Okay, so then science, Bronx Science, and put singing and piano, which is what you're accepted in LaGuardia for. And then you get accepted into Brown University. I was accepted into
LaGuardia for acting, piano, and
and then didn't do any of it.
And if I had been allowed to audition for 4, I would have auditioned and probably gotten in for dance too. The only category that I never would have gotten into was visual arts because I don't have that talent. But yeah, no, I was annoyingly precocious. But yes, I skipped it all, didn't do any of it, and then ended up at Brown and started doing theater.
So you get to Brown. What do you think you're going to do at Brown then? Because you're doing the academic route at this point.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't sure. I really didn't know. One of the reasons I was so excited about going to Brown is that it felt like an easy place to figure it out. I had started studying Chinese in high school because at Brown Science they offered Mandarin because, some significant portion of the student body were Chinese American. And I just had, whatever, yes, nerd. It was like, the commute to Bronx Science took an hour on the train every day from where I lived, and I had a crew of friends that I met up with and took the train with. And my junior year, my first period ended up being free. So unlike a lot of kids at schools where they would just sleep for an extra 45 minutes, I wanted to take the train with my friends. So I got there and decided to try to fill it with a class and I wanted to do a language. And the language that was offered at the time that was beginning level was Chinese. And that's how that started. I was studying Spanish, I was like, I could study French or Italian or something else that would make sense with Spanish. And the only language, was Chinese. And the head of the department was like, just go take a class, just try it. And I'm like, no, that makes no sense with Spanish. But I took one class and I was hooked. And I loved it so much that was the one thing I knew I would do. I didn't think I would major in it at Brown, but I loved studying that language so much. And I ended up being an East Asian Studies major in college.
Wait, you got your degree in East Asian Studies?
Yes, in Chinese literature and language being my focus.
Wow.
So I know, it was great. I definitely only did that because I was able to do all the theater and take all the acting classes I wanted to without being a major. That was the nice thing about that college is that you could there were lots of programs that I was aware of that friends went to where you had to be a major in order to take the good classes, but that wasn't the case there. So I got to do everything. I even took a year off after my sophomore year and lived in Hong Kong and traveled around China. I was like, it was like junior year abroad, but just a year off and traveling and doing nothing to do with theater. It was great.
Wow. So you're going out, discovering yourself in China while discovering yourself at Brown and figure out what you really want to do while still majoring in East Asian studies.
Yep.
And I love this through line in your life of like utter, and this I mean this is an absolute compliment, but utter nerddom, like the epitome of nerding out over knowledge. And I respect that so much, because it's one of those things where in life as I get older, I feel like you will only slow down if you let yourself stop learning.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I feel like now, like, you're constantly just trying to be like, well, okay, well, I can do that too, and I'm going to do that too, and I'm going to learn about this because it might lead to that. And so then you get out of Brown, and you got this major in East Asian studies, and I mean, eventually, you've got this major in East Asian studies, but you're in love with theater. So what then? And we're about the same age. So I remember in 2007 when my regional career was starting to exponentially grow. It was totally derailed by the writer's strike that happened at that point. So that set me back on a completely different path. But where were you at this point in life?
Well, I actually, by senior year at Brown, I knew that acting was it for me, and I wanted to go to grad school because I figured I had taken some classes and gotten some experience, but it felt very much like part of the ethos of, I guess, the Brown undergrad education, that all the great actors that had come before me went on to graduate school, got their MFAs. I just felt, I don't know why, or maybe it was also like the nerd in me that felt like I need to actually pursue more study. But, and I also knew that I think on the back of my mind, I knew that I probably would want to be able to teach, because even in college, I did some volunteer teaching with some arts organizations in high schools, and I knew I really loved it. So I auditioned for graduate programs, and because of the relationship that was forming with Trinity Repertory Company in Providence and Brown, I was essentially recruited to be in the first class of the new grad program that they were starting, the new MFA program, which meant that I hung around Providence. I did some shows right out of college. I had a solo show that I'd written that got done at a small theater in Providence.
Did you have to do all the parts, though?
I did all the parts.
Yeah.
I did like a rock musical in Boston. And then I think I had a small part in 2 shows at Trinity Rep that season as I was getting ready to go to grad school. And then I went to grad school for 3 years. So I did that. And, in making that decision, that was me kind of, I'm going to be an actor, and that's what I'm going to do.
So then, okay, you've got this path, and you're embracing this, and this is wonderful. And then you go perform, and then in the mid-noughts you meet who's now your husband, have 2 kids, I believe.
Yeah.
And then at some point become an adjunct professor again at NYU Tisch.
Yeah.
And with 2 kids, you're now auditioning and you're doing the mom life and the teaching life and the Broadway life, which on paper seem like they're all mutually exclusive.
It definitely makes for a chaotic existence sometimes, I will say that. But in some ways, we built it all slowly, It feels like in some ways, when I got right out of graduate school, I did mostly regional theater just because it paid better than the kind of off-Broadway shows that I had access to. I had student loans to worry about, and it was like going to Arena Stage, which was one of my first, big job away from Trinity Rep and Brown, going to the Guthrie, going to the Shakespeare Theater in DC, which actually, the Shakespeare Theater became kind of a artistic home for me for a bunch of years. Michael Kahn really took me and my husband under his wing, made us company members, and I think I did a show, like 1 show a year there for a while, which was also an interesting thing because in the graduate program at Brown Trinity, the focus had been new plays, had been new work. We worked with the MFA playwrights at Brown, many of whom you would term kind of experimental or innovative, or just, they weren't writing traditional plays. And that was the work that I kind of was trained with. And so it was and we did plenty of Shakespeare in the classics, but the stuff that I figured I would be doing out of school was not a bunch of Shakespeare and Ibsen and all the things that a Lope de Vega play. But I'd say during those years, I'd kind of do 2 or 3 shows out of New York, and then I would do a temp job to be able to do some Off-Broadway play in the city. And it was like that negotiation of being in and out. And then really and I was always sort of trying to teach if I knew I was going to be in town and was off. I was lucky in that I had assisted the voice and speech teacher we had in grad school my final year. And so I had a little bit of teaching experience to kind of put forth on my resume, and just got lucky. Friends of mine who were a little bit deeper into the teaching world would occasionally throw me substitute opportunities, and eventually I got my first class. I think the first proper course I taught was at Brooklyn College in the BFA program years ago. And you just sort of build it, I just slowly started building my teaching career that way without being really non-committal, frankly, because I was always and still do prioritize acting. So it took a number of years to find the right situation where the university and the program and the department and the chair would be truly supportive of the fact that at a moment's notice I might have to go. And I had a lot of bad situations over the years at certain institutions and some really positive ones. And so I'm very happy I landed at Tisch and in the departments that I work in, because everybody's been really supportive and understanding, because it's kind of thing where I can say I'll teach for the whole year, and then actually I can only teach one semester, or actually I'm going to need to sub out this 6 weeks. And so people have to really be willing to go along with that. But it was that built slowly, as well as the decision to stay in New York, which really was when I found out I was pregnant with my daughter. I was doing a show in New York, and it was it was at that point the first little moment of buzziness I guess I had ever had. It was at EST, and I got a great review in the paper, and I got a Drama Desk nomination, and it was kind of a perfect part in this wonderful play called Think, about actors in the blacklist. And it was this little moment that felt like, oh, maybe some doors are opening. And in the same week as I found out about the Drama Desk and the Times Review rave, I found out I was pregnant. And then I thought, well, I guess I should keep the job that I have lined up, because I'm going to need the health insurance. A lot of people would have been like, great, I'm here in New York, I'm going to start making moves. And I had plans to go do a play at Berkshire Theater Festival, and then to go play Isabella in Measure for Measure at the Shakespeare Theater, which I did. And I did up through almost my 7 months of pregnancy, 7th month of pregnancy. I played the virginal non-Shakespeare problem play.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, which was a wild experience. But after that, and then I went and had a baby. I had a baby, and then things changed, because there wasn't gallivanting around doing regional theater. So in a way, the life choices started to force the other choices, and it became simpler. And things just started to fall into place in a nice way, where I actually got cast in a Claire Barron play called You Got Older that Annie Kaufman directed. That was my first time working with Annie. And so when you also trace back this Tony win started in some ways back in 2014 when we did this play together, 9 years ago. And that just started to change things, and having less ability and less desire to go off and do shows. And I sort of figured, well, maybe I'll work less as an actor, but I didn't in the end. I just figured out ways to make it work. I had incredibly supportive parents who were willing to come babysit, and theaters that were willing to make it work. So I don't know, we didn't have a second child right away, clear. It wasn't until my daughter was 4 that we even thought that we possibly could. And in my son is now 4, but in his first year of life, I did three plays.
Wow.
You know, I did, and when I was pregnant with him, I did a bunch of TV and film when I wasn't on stage. You know, and I don't know, I just figured out a way to make it work. I remember when I was pregnant with my daughter, initially being sort of confronting what I felt was like old-fashioned reactionary attitudes from some older actors / theater people that sort of seemed to suggest, well, like, you start having kids, it's going to be really hard to keep your career. And I don't know, I'm stubborn and I'm persistent. In some ways, having a kid changed everything for the better for me. And and then having two turned out to be a good idea too.
We're going to take a short break. Stay tuned for more of the episode.
So your daughter now, if I'm doing math right, it's probably about 8.5, 9.
She's
right?
9, yeah, she's 9.
Yeah. So my older son's the same age. Does she realize what mommy just won? Does she realize what's happening with mommy?
She does. It's amazing. Because I hadn't done a play since the last play I did before Sidney Brustein was at the Atlantic and ended early with COVID, right? It was one of the plays that was running. We were almost done with our run, but it was running in February and March of 2020. And she was only, 6 then? And so newly 6 and had a very different relationship to it. She liked coming to the theater. I have pictures of her in every dressing room, on every set of anything I'd ever done, and she loved it, but she didn't quite understand it in the same way. And coming back with a 3-year break and having her really be part of this process has been amazing. She was just excited when we were at BAM. She would come and hang out and watch the warm-up, and she watched the show. She saw it, which was definitely a little young for the subject matter, but she came. Yeah, but she came to Broadway and hung out in my dressing room all the time. She totally got all the hoopla about the Tony. She's so excited. She has announced many times that she's going to win a Tony someday, and she's going to play Mavis the next time it comes back to Broadway. Yeah, she knows all my lines. She makes me pretend to be Oscar and do the scene with her sometimes. It's very cute.
That's so cool. My kids now, they came to me the other day. They're like, "Daddy, are you famous?" And I was like, "No, why?" They're like, "Because we put your name into Google and you're there." You're famous, aren't you? I was like, "No, not how you think I am."
There's a lot of that. There's a lot of like, God, how do you even know about this concept and why are you obsessed with it? Because I never have been. So let me try to dispel this.
I know. Oh, it's so interesting to me, and I love that you're taking your kids into that realm, because I think it's so important just to see how hard it is, and to see you can work hard, and I assume like she's been there for rehearsals, and there's times when she's got to sit there quietly with a coloring book or something, right?
Totally.
And then to see it come together and to see this recognition, it's got to be so rewarding as a parent too, not only as just like a regular parent, but also as like a parent of a working mother in an industry that's one of the hardest to exist in general. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, it's been really, really nice, and it's been I've been really grateful to be able to just share it with her and have her kind of understand. It's really different with the 4-year-old. I don't know how old your youngest is, but the 4-year-old is the sweetest little boy, and he doesn't really understand, and so the main relationship he has to it is that it's this thing that takes mama away, and I can never do bedtime,
Yeah.
So it's she, I've been celebrating how much she can appreciate it, but it also just does tug on the heartstrings a bit. But now I'm for the foreseeable future. It's to be bedtime all the time.
Well, your character of Mavis is a kind of a racist bigot, not kind of, is. And so I guess I was going to ask, like, sort of how you approach something that seems to be so different from who you are as a regular person. But now I'm very curious. You said that your daughter's seen it, and obviously they absorb, as children, they absorb everything they see. And were you able to sit down with her? Have you had that conversation of like, these lines aren't real, this person isn't real, I'm saying things to teach a lesson or whatever it is? Like, how did you approach that?
Totally. No, we talked about it a lot. I mean, I'm lucky in that she goes to this pretty magical little school where they are very proactive about talking about everything to do with race and social justice and prejudice. And I feel like she already had a really good foundation for that. But I definitely had to talk to her a lot about the fact that my character has some really like wrong beliefs and says a lot of flawed and problematic and hurtful things. It's funny though, her main preoccupation was the fact that I smoke a cigarette in the play. Not the fact that I say like anti-Semitic things, you know, and she's also like very been sort of waking up and enjoying being Jewish, you know, and so that didn't seem to be a hiccup at all for her, or the fact that, you know, I explained that my character had a wrong way of thinking about race and didn't think that her white sister should be with a black man. And, you know, she got all that and didn't seem to be fazed by it. But watching Mommy smoke, even though I explained it was a fake herbal cigarette, was problematic. Also, just to you know, to fully out myself here in my failure as a mother, I completely forgot to brief her or prepare her for the whole sex worker suicide aspect of the play.
Oh.
I don't know how that just completely escaped me, but I think I was so worried about talking to her about the things my character was doing, right? About the racism and the anti-Semitism and all of the homophobia, but that I just forgot to mention the fact that the younger sister was a prostitute and killed herself in the play. So that was the main topic of discussion after she saw it, which she sort of took in stride and was surprisingly mature about.
How do you explain sex work to an 8-year-old?
I didn't really explain sex work. I didn't really explain it. No, I didn't explain that.
Okay.
Suicide is strangely like an easier concept to explain, not to get too dark about it, but like somehow I found as a parent easier to just sort of talk about that rather than sex work.
Because my older one now, well, just matter of fact, like it's just like roses are red and violets are blue. Like, I know how sex works now, Daddy. I'm like, okay.
Whoa.
Like the anatomy of what happens.
Yeah,
the
right.
mechanics of it.
Wow.
He understands because they learned about it in science. That's what he says.
Okay, all right.
Why people do it, we haven't touched on yet.
Right.
But how it works, he's like, man, I don't know why people want to do it. That's cool. We'll fine, whatever.
Right.
So that's a separate conversation. But
That's so funny.
yeah, and you're right. And in my younger one, my kids are 20 months apart. So my younger one's about to be 7 in 2 weeks actually, and he's strangely, like in a healthy way, asks a lot of questions about death. Not in a morbid way, but he's like, so one day, like, you're going to be gone, right? And I'm like, well, yeah, I'll be gone. Or like that, the animal, like those bugs, when you squish them, they're dead. They don't come back. Like, no, they definitely do not come back. Like he asks good questions. So yeah, I totally understand how suicide death is an easier binary concept to understand.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
But I get that. I totally get that. Real quick too, I want to ask, because I actually don't know this. Was the original intent to stay off Broadway? Was the Broadway run ever expected?
No, it wasn't. It's funny. A lot of people, when it got announced, and a lot of friends of mine knew that, being like, "Oh my God!" Like, I guess we're conditioned to assume that everything has Broadway aspirations, but truly it did not. It was actually very specifically chosen to fit into Oscar and Rachel's schedules, to fit into the band season, to do that limited run. It felt like BAM was the right home for it, without the pressures of doing a commercial production. It's funny that the play actually almost got done on Broadway at the Roundabout once or twice over the years. I was part of a production that the same director, Annie Kaufman, directed in Chicago at the Goodman in 2016. And it was such a success that there was interest in New York, and she had been trying to drive a production to New York for a while. And we did a reading at the Roundabout with Ben Stiller in the lead, actually. And we were going to do it. He was excited about it, and we were going to do it. And then as things happened, schedules changed, and I think something that this TV series he was directing changed timeline, and then it didn't fit in with Annie's schedule. And that was probably like in 2017 or 2018, and then it all fell apart. And I think she has been trying to get it back ever since. And I just learned this recently at BAM, sometime during the pandemic, BAM said, we're ready to do it when we come back. And I think Annie actually went to Ben initially because he had been attached to it, and he wasn't free, even though he had loved it. And he suggested Oscar Isaac. He was friends with Oscar. He's like, Oscar would be perfect. He's like, in some ways, he's like, he'd be better. He's perfect for this. So then it all started to happen. But no, once Oscar was in place, and I think I did a reading with Oscar and Rachel before it was programmed at BAM, but when they were thinking about it, and it was never going to be more than that. And that was kind of wonderful. And in some ways, what that meant is that we just made it for BAM, which means that nobody was worried about it being commercial or even palatable or easy. It's not an easy play. It's really thorny and complicated and chaotic. And in some ways, we were just fully able to just be in the full experience of the play. It was 3 hours. Like nobody batted an eyelash. BAM, they're used to going and sitting through 7-hour long plays. Like, so it just, in some ways, it was the perfect way to create something. And it wasn't until I think in our last week of performances at BAM, both Rachel and Oscar, their other projects had either gotten moved or fallen apart, and suddenly they were free. And I think just that sort of energy of, oh no, this shouldn't be ending. It's so good. And people just started, I think, in the last couple of weeks, reaching out and making calls, and it really was very last minute. So we closed the show thinking that it was done. BAM, they threw out the set, like it was done. And I went on vacation with my family, and 5 days after we closed, I got a call that we might be moving to Broadway. And so many things had to line up. I know that a theater had to become free unexpectedly. Jeremy O'Harris had kind of, from Italy on a writer's retreat, called all his people and got them into our last week of performances and got everyone fired up, and they had somehow raised the money. It's really sort of a perfectly kind of romantic, amazing story of how that happened, because it was never the intention, and it was a kind of glorious surprise, and I think a pretty historic turnaround time for how quickly it all happened.
That's so insane. I thought that they knew. I thought there was probably something like in the works and Off-Broadway, like BAM was just the precursor, but like they threw out the set even. Like that's how definitive it was.
No, it was done. We were done. We were done. We had, the last week there was like murmurs about, maybe we'll take it to Broadway. I think some theaters from London had come and were quite interested in bringing. So let me be clear, the costumes, like it's not everything that had thrown out, but the set itself, which was all these big steel beams and this massive structure, there was nowhere to put all that. So no, it was, we thought it was done.
That's so cool. I saw it at BAM because BAM's only a couple blocks from my house. I live there in Brooklyn. And so, I saw it at BAM and just loved it. It was a beautiful production in a beautiful house. And you're right. It just worked. It was built specifically for that space and that audience. And to see it transfer over was great. I think it opened I think it was like 2 or 3 days before the Tony eligibility cutoff. Like it was under the wire.
The day. We had our first preview, I think, April 25th. And we had like 3 or 4 previews before opening, and Tony cut off. Yeah. It was crazy.
3 or 4? Wow. Okay. That's insane.
Yeah.
Well, cool.
And
well, obviously,
it was the same, but we had to change a lot. And also just being in that different space was a huge adjustment for all of us.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. Well,
we're going to take a short break. Stay tuned for more of the episode.
I feel like I could talk to you forever, but
Hey,
obviously
no.
we need to wrap up here at some point. So I have 3 questions I ask everybody to end the episodes. The first one, just very
great.
simply, is just what motivates you.
As an actor?
Sure.
as a person?
It's open to
Okay.
interpretation, so take it as you will.
So I think it as an actor. What motivates me, of course, I'm thinking about theater specifically because it was our time back on stage in 3 years. And I had this experience one of our last nights of just watching Oscar in one of his big, incredible, speeches that he was giving, experiencing the audience with him and all of that kind of alive energy and community. And I just, that experience, that sort of breathing together, sharing with 1,000 strangers, that having the shift in molecules that can happen in those moments, that motivates me. Experiencing that and being part of that and like driving that and bestowing that, all of it.
God, oh, I love that. I said that it's so often in the pandemic. It's like I miss the shared emotional journey you take with a room full of strangers.
Totally.
It's cathartic. It's great.
Yeah.
All right. What advice would you give to your younger self and younger people listening now, starting out down a similar path?
Okay. I was definitely told by several different people that it might take some time, and there are many different paths to a career, and I will say I took that in and I listened to it. So I would just remind my younger self to not be offended by the suggestion that I wasn't going to be a star at 27, and that doing meaningful work and feeling proud of the community you're building and looking. I mean, the thing is, the irony here, right, is that the Tony, it's sensational. It's such an honor. It's so incredible, and I'm so happy about it. But I'm really also happy to be able to look back and name so many shows and so many experiences that I've been so proud of, and the people I've gotten to work with, and the work itself. And so that's the thing to cling to. That's what it's about. It's not about yes, being 45 and winning a Tony is amazing. It's amazing, but I'm just as proud of so many other things that have happened along the way that weren't on the radar,
That's beautiful. Okay, last question, hardest one. If you could only see one show for the rest of your life, but you can see it as many times as you want, what would you see?
Oh my God. That's impossible. God, what would it be? I'm just going to go out on a crazy limb and say some musical that I love to listen to, because you'd have to like the music. So let's say Carousel. It's a lie. I'd probably get so sick of it, but I love the music in that. It came to mind. It was a formative experience seeing that as a little girl. So there you go.
All right. So where can we find you online? Do you do the social media game?
Yeah, I have an Instagram account. It's just my name, I think. She checks. Yeah.
She looks down and checks.
Yeah, I'm online. I'm on Instagram.
Okay.
That's the way.
Well, now because you have Instagram, you can get on Threads. Right?
I know, I haven't done that yet. I guess I should.
Get on Threads. Yeah, I just joined Threads. It's actually kind of nice.
Is it?
Really
Okay.
is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, Patreon. Leave a rating, leave a review wherever you're listening. Music by Jukebox the Ghost. And Miriam, thank you so much. I've had so much fun chatting with you.
Thank you so much. It's been lovely. Aww.
Take a deep breath, make the world a little colorful.